The moment I told Ethan I was pregnant, I expected fear, maybe even silence, but I never expected betrayal. I still remember how tightly I held the small white test in my trembling hands that rainy evening. My heart was racing so hard I could barely breathe. We had been together for 4 years. 4 years of promises, late-night talks, and dreams about building a future together. At least, that's what I believed. Ethan always told me I was his safe place. He said I made his life feel complete. Every time I doubted our future, he would pull me close and whisper, "It's always going to be you and me." So when I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified, but also strangely happy. I imagined us becoming a family. I imagined tiny socks, sleepy mornings, and Ethan holding our baby with tears in his eyes. But what I didn't know that day was how quickly love could disappear when responsibility arrived. He came home late that night, wearing his gray coat, rain dripping from his shoulders. I was sitting at the kitchen table, nervously staring at the pregnancy test beside 2 untouched cups of coffee. The second he saw my face, his smile faded. "What happened?" he asked quietly. I looked at him and whispered the words that changed my entire life. "I'm pregnant." For a few seconds, he didn't move. Then he laughed nervously. "You're joking, right?" I shook my head slowly. And suddenly, his entire expression changed. The warmth disappeared from his eyes like someone had turned off a light inside him. He stepped away from me instead of closer. "Emma, this can't happen right now." Those words shattered something inside me immediately. I tried to stay calm. "We'll figure it out together." But Ethan ran his hair through his head and started pacing the kitchen. No, you don't understand. My promotion interview is next month. I can't deal with this right now." Deal with this? Not our baby, not our future, just this. I felt cold all over, but what hurt even more came next. The next morning, I woke up alone. Ethan was gone. No goodbye, no message. At first, I thought he just needed time, until my phone started exploding with messages. Friends were asking if I was okay. Someone sent me screenshots, and that was the moment my world collapsed completely. Because while I was still crying in bed, Ethan had already told everyone I trapped him with the pregnancy. I stared at those messages for hours, unable to breathe properly. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my phone twice. People I barely knew were suddenly discussing my private life online. Ethan's friends were defending him publicly, while strangers called me manipulative, desperate, and selfish. And the worst part? Ethan stayed silent while everyone destroyed me. I kept hoping he would call and explain everything. I wanted to believe the man I loved would never humiliate me like this. But instead, he blocked my number. Just like that. 4 years together, erased overnight. For weeks, I barely left my apartment. I cried constantly. I couldn't eat. Every mirror reminded me I was carrying a child whose father already abandoned us emotionally. But what I didn't know then was that betrayal has a strange way of revealing the truth. Looking back, the signs had always been there. Ethan loved attention. He loved admiration. He loved looking successful more than actually building something meaningful. And suddenly, I realized something terrifying. He didn't love me deeply. He loved how easy I made his life feel. The moment life became difficult, he ran. One night, after another wave of cruel messages online, I finally broke down completely in my bathroom floor. I remember holding my stomach and whispering through tears, "I'm so sorry." I felt like I had already failed my child before they were even born. But then something changed. A few days later, I went for my first ultrasound appointment alone. I was terrified walking into that clinic by myself. Couples filled the waiting room, while I sat quietly in the corner trying not to cry. Then the doctor smiled gently and turned the monitor toward me, and I heard the heartbeat. That tiny sound changed everything inside me. For the first time in weeks, I stopped thinking about Ethan, because suddenly, this wasn't about him anymore. It was about me becoming strong enough for someone who needed me. So I stopped begging for explanations. I stopped checking Ethan's social media. I stopped reading comments. I stopped trying to defend myself to people who already chose sides. And slowly, I rebuilt my life. I worked extra hours remotely while preparing for motherhood alone. I took online classes at night to improve my career opportunities. I learned how to survive without waiting for someone to rescue me. Meanwhile, Ethan kept pretending online that he was thriving. Promotions, expensive dinners, smiling photos. But what he didn't realize was that lies eventually collapse under their own weight. 6 months later, one of Ethan's coworkers contacted me privately. She apologized for believing his story. Then she told me something that made my stomach drop. Ethan had been telling different versions of the pregnancy story to everyone. Some people heard I lied, others heard I cheated, others heard the baby wasn't his. His entire image was built on lies, and eventually those lies reached the wrong people, including his company. I never planned revenge. Honestly, I was too exhausted trying to survive emotionally and physically. But life has a way of exposing people without you lifting a finger. A month before I gave birth, Ethan's company launched an internal investigation after complaints about dishonesty and inappropriate behavior during client interviews. Apparently, several coworkers had already noticed inconsistencies in his stories, but once rumors about me spread through the office, people started questioning everything, and eventually screenshots surfaced, messages, posts, lies, all connected back to him. Suddenly, the charming, successful image he spent years building started falling apart publicly. The same people who once praised him began distancing themselves quietly. And then, one evening, my phone rang. It was Ethan. For a second, I froze, staring at his name on the screen. Part of me wanted to ignore it forever, but another part of me needed closure. So I answered. His voice sounded smaller somehow, weaker. "Emma, I messed everything up." I stayed silent. Then he started crying. Not dramatic crying, real crying, the kind that comes from finally realizing the damage you caused. And honestly, hearing those words no longer hurt the way I expected, because by then, I had already survived the worst part without him. I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl 2 weeks later, and the moment I held her for the first time, every painful night suddenly felt worth surviving. She became my reason to heal. Months later, Ethan tried reaching out again, asking to fix things, but by then, I finally understood something important. Love without loyalty is just comfort pretending to be commitment. I didn't need revenge anymore. Watching him lose the image he valued more than our family was enough. The real victory wasn't his downfall, it was my growth. Because the woman crying alone on the bathroom floor no longer existed. In her place stood someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who finally understood her worth wasn't tied to being chosen by someone else. And sometimes, the most powerful thing a broken heart can do is heal without the person who caused the damage. Now, every night when I hold my daughter close, I think about how terrified I once felt, and I wish I could go back and whisper to that frightened version of myself. You are not being abandoned. You are being redirected toward a stronger life than you ever imagined.